What sort of features are you looking to have on your B9 3.0 T-Tune that will set you apart from APR and EPL?
I mean, the biggest feature we always add is just going to be
It's good.
yeah, it's going to be a really solid fundamental bass tune. Just,
Yeah.
we're taking the time, we're ironing out everything we can. We're trying to hit every corner of the tune that you might hit on, on track, on the street.
Yeah.
So, I feel like we're going to have, the most refined tune out of the box ready to go. We are going to be adding more features to it. That's coming along with all of our other products.
Yeah.
You'll get your launch control stuff. We're looking at adding, flex fuel support. So there's a number of things down the road that we will be working on implementing. But
Yeah.
off the bat, we don't want to spend our time with all these bells and whistles if the bass tune isn't
Right.
rock solid.
Yeah, and to add to what Nate said, we will continue to develop these tunes.
Yeah, we're not done with these, just because we released it.
Yeah. I suspect EPL is probably continuing to develop it, but APR they tend to put a tune out and then it's kind of what you get, and then they might do an update someday, they may not. But as we've shown with our B8 S4 tuning and the rest of our tuning, that we're constantly improving and adding features, especially when these are tunes that you guys like and are using, then we speak directly to you, we take your feedback, and we make those changes. So what we will release initially will be a relatively straightforward, simple, but extremely well engineered and tested file. And then we will continue to add features to that over time. And if you buy our stage 1 or stage 2, you'll get lifetime upgrades after that. You won't have to pay for those.
And it's not just minor updates. I mean, we're talking like with the B8 generation, it was full new software suites, new tunes, new features,
launch control,
more
two-step
octanes, whatever we feel we can get in there, that you're going to get it.
Yeah. So, but I think you're in this question, you're kind of talking about features, and I made a joke about our tune will be good. But what you'll actually be driving aren't features. It's all of the calibration inside the ECU that, frankly, you and other people take for granted, is what makes this tune enjoyable and rewarding and exhilarating on a day-to-day basis. Every time you push down throttle, or you leave a stoplight, or you slow down to go around a corner, those aren't features. That's the tuning working and being properly calibrated. And so that's what we're always committed to. And right now we have Nate and Eric, our one of our other software calibrators, are both working on this tune and optimizing it. We've track tested it twice in the last month. I've personally road tested it for hundreds of miles, and I will continue to.
Yep.
And we have multiple different staff here, including a millennial, testing it, which millennials can be pretty picky. He said it hurt his feelings that we were the way the boost came on. So we've even made emotional adjustments to the software. So
we're trying to set it so the climate control can't go 75 degrees. That's one of the requirements, I think.
What is that?
The climate control limited to the lowest it can go is like 75 degrees.
Yeah. So
gotta keep them warm.
The millennial asked for this feature to not have to put a water bottle in the steering wheel for the lane control, but legal said no. All right. So so we're here, we're committed, we're adding features, but it's going to be a really good tune. It's going to be safe, optimized. It's going to make the most power it can safely and with great drivability.
Comment, you a millennial?
Hey, we also did hot weather testing, Death Valley.
We did.
You got to get uncomfortable.
We had an old dude driving it on track pass.
We put a
that old guy. The old guy, man, he was thrashing. Can you imagine getting passed and then on top by an old guy? So humiliating.
It is. Unfortunately, you have to explain that they're not features. That's just.
It's understandable. It
is. People like to read. We struggle with this. People like to read a huge feature list and think that that's, they're getting more value because they have more line items on this list.
You know what it's like? It's like you go to two different restaurants and you order a cheeseburger from each restaurant. They both have cheese, and mayonnaise and mustard and lettuce and tomato. They both have that, but both those hamburgers are not going to taste the same, and that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the features, the list. I'm talking about how does it taste? What beef is being used? What's the fat content? Is it old wilty lettuce or is it fresh and crispy? Has the bun been toasted or not? And those are the little things that make a difference between two things that look the same on paper. So you guys can't lose sight of 99% of what you're evaluating isn't features. It's the tune, and that's what really counts. But people buy features. It's kind of our dilemma a lot of times, and so we end up adding extra bells and whistles, even though they don't really add to the tune or the driving experience. But people buy into it, so we have to recognize that. Do you plan on offering upgraded turbo options for the B9 S4 platform? Do you see this platform surpassing 600 horsepower on stock turbos?
The stock turbo.
Yeah, stock turbo, no.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he's saying turbos. Maybe he's talking the RS as well. But if we keep it just the
he said B9 S4.
B9 platform.
B9 S4.
Oh, somebody.
Okay, somebody added it.
Played, yeah.
Yeah, so I think the RS6 could get up there.
RS4, RS5.
RS5, sorry. The S4, no. The S4 has about a 450 horsepower turbo. That's all it's ever going to do with that turbo. Now, it's nice. The car feels great with the stock turbo optimized, like we're doing. It's actually really quick. But we are currently we have a pure 750 that we have here or on order. It's on its way. That we will be doing a tune for that.
Yep.
We will continue to explore other options. We're going to be working with another customer who has pure on his RS5.
We have a TT 710 way for the S4.
Oh, we do.
Yep.
Oh, okay. And we have a TTE 710. So, yes, so here's the deal with the B9 S4. Stage 1, Stage 2. It'll be a fun little, quick boost in power.
It's dramatic. I mean, you get a pretty fat mid-range increase.
Yeah, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see, but it's not necessarily going to B8 S4 power levels without changing the turbo.
Not stage 2 plus.
Not fully strung up. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
not without changing hardware.
Because you can keep the stock supercharger and you get to over 500 horsepower, but you're not going to do that on the S4.
Right.
So, hybrid turbos, stage 3 type stuff will be very popular for the B9 platform, and we're excited about that. It's not like the TT. I mean, in my opinion, TTRS or the RS3 is an amazing car with the stock turbo. It's pretty much all the power most people would need.
Yes.
And like on track, you'd be hard pressed to find a faster turbo. And certainly, fast road drive
stuff. Yeah, the TTRS is just phenomenal.
A big, these big hybrids and stuff, and the big full frame stuff is not going to be faster spooling and more responsive than the stock turbo. And you can still get to like 550, with bolt-ons on the stock turbo, and it's fucking fast. So, but the B9 S4 is that it's a totally different situation, and there will be lots of turbo upgrading going on those cars. So thankfully, it's sitting right there on the top.
It's a nice spot for you to change.
You can grab a beer, have some of your friends over, and you guys can take some nuts off and put it all back together. So no dropping motors and things like that, like with the B5 S4. What is the biggest roadblock you've run into with the engine tune for the B9 S4 as far as getting power reliably? I'd say none. I mean, there's been calibration.
Yeah, there's some
challenges.
Calibration stuff where the OEM strategy was interesting to say the least that we're working around, and there's a number of limits and things that had to be remapped.
But those are like literally roadblocks. Those aren't necessarily technical challenges. That's like Audi just it's Bosch keeping us out of the ECU.
Right. There's all that everybody.
They're literally roadblocks.
Yes.
But I'd say from a technical standpoint, other than overcoming the inherent challenges that are in an encrypted,
right, a
hexadecimal code and an ECU, a protected, with NSA level security on it. It's we have a level of expertise that hasn't really been challenging as far as like the tuning and calibration.
Yeah,
it's just been finding the right map and making those changes.
Spending the time is what that's the roadblock is we got to strike that balance of how much time can we spend to get this calibration where we want it versus we have to release it at some point. We can massage the thing ad nauseum, but we want to get it in your hands once it's still.
But I've driven it and it felt OEM to me.
Yep,
I couldn't find any part of the power band that wasn't smooth and drove like a factory car, except it was just a lot faster and a lot more power.
And it's every part of the calibration too. We're not talking about just being able to make power. It's also rethinking the thermal management, the fan controls, the how do all the systems interact, and how do you manage the extra heat that you're making.
That's what we've been doing at the racetrack. Is you can't really get the car very hot on the road.
Not compared to a track.
Unless you wanted to like get arrested. So you go on track and you do a couple laps and it's really hot. And then you can see like, is the ECU making these changes based on the thermal management? And it is, and
we've made adjustments based on that. It's you can't test, you can obviously do your best guess, but you can't get the data until you actually go out and
it's all exactly as the OEM would do, which a lot of aftermarket tuners, they just disable that stuff because it gets too complicated to build that all in. But what we're ensuring is that all the factory thermal management and safety features continue to work as intended. And those have to be scaled up, right? The factory ECU would normally freak out if it saw those type of numbers.
Yeah, well, it is.
So you have to go in and recalibrate all the safety systems.
The OEM strategies and the OEM control ranges and expectations are far lower than what we're working in, because we're not falsifying any of the torque output. We're correctly modeling the variables within the ECU. Yeah. So, everything has to be mapped and accounted for.
Yeah, it's like kind of like if you're a babysitter and your safety perspective is for a 2-year-old, and then the 2-year-old turns 6, but you're still treating the 6-year-old like a 2-year-old. That's like what the factory ECU does. So when we have to like go reprogram the factory ECU and say, no, this kid's now 6, they can do a lot of those things. There's still some things they can't do, but now the ECU is continuing to manage the safety of the engine, but with programmed with the higher output and performance that we've calibrated in it. What a lot of people would do is a lot of tuners would just say, the kid's now 6, no babysitter. It's too much work. We can't retrain the babysitter. So the kid now just goes outside alone. And it's still a 6-year-old kid. It's not safe, right? They need to be watched. We've recalibrated the engine and actually needs more attention for safety, not less. So that's why we put it as such a high priority. All right, some various B9 topics. What has been different about tuning the MG1 ECU versus the older S4 ECUs? More resolution adjustability?
So it depends which S4 you're talking about. The older S4, so B8, was a completely different engine management. So that was Continental CMOS versus now we're on Bosch MG1. The Bosch MG1 stuff is a evolution of their what was basically Motronic MD17, and it shares a lot of that structure and a lot of that philosophy. It's kind of just another layer of additional, strategies and control systems and complexity on top of that. So,
there's more maps, right? I mean, a lot of it has.
And
they just keep adding more and more.
They keep adding. This goes all the way back through like ME7, and then there's MED9, which is an evolution of ME7. So it's got all the ME7.
So what do you like? I mean, I can throw out some generic numbers, but like the number of maps in ME7 versus.
Oh yeah. So ME7, I mean, you're looking at around probably on the later ones, 4,000 to 5,000 maps. I think just calibration points.
Different maps that have various control functions.
Yeah,
and so like
either switches, maps, tables.
And so the ECU, the base tuning in the ECU is represented in these different maps.
Everything you can tweak within the calibration to affect something in the motor, the way it, everything from how it talks to other modules to how it, what your foot does, what it does when you put your foot down, is defined within those 3,000 to 5,000.
Yeah, and these are like tables of hexadecimal code.
I'm actually
not
pulling up the B9 right now.
So from 4,000 to.
I'm trying to find one where I just have So everything here has our RAM variables as well. So we're at 100,400 variables that we're dealing.
So that tells you the level of complexity.
Both, maybe cut that in half. We're talking 50 to 60,000 maps.
Yeah. So 10 times more control and functionality inside the ECU than a 10-year-old ECU.
Yep. So yeah, it's I think probably we'd see 30 to 40% increase in maps typically generation over generation. So,
and a lot of that's for emissions and compliance.
It's a lot of different things. The Bosch world sort of just kind of updates and retains all the old stuff too. So there's all these functions that just do all the same thing they used to do back through year 2001 1.8T Audi. There's still some variables that are still calculated because some function somewhere uses that variable. So it's all these layers that get added, and you have to know how it all interacts. And it's.
But imagine if you finally find one map that say controls or affects a change to the level of boost, and you raise the boost. But if that map is connected to 700 other maps, you just now changed one thing, but then there's additional layers. And so a lot of the time that we spend doing calibration is making a change, finding out how that actually affects the way the engine runs, and then chasing down all those other connections inside the ECU. I couldn't do it. Nate, has patience of, Gandhi or someone like that. But yeah, it
requires
that's what takes time.
Stubborn mindset.
Just
really
never being defeated by the complexity and how impossible it would be to figure out, and you just stick to it and you keep changing, and you find the better the logging tools we have. When you can log, then you can see how those maps are all connected.
Right. And for all of these ECUs, we have far more logging than what you get off the shelf with them. We have
you build your own tools.
Yeah, we've built our own tools over the years, and this is both on the laptop to be able to communicate to the actual communication structures within the ECU. We rewrite so that we can get the data out as much and as quickly as possible. For all of our platforms, from Bosch to CMOS to even TCU side, we've done a number of firmware rewrites on that too to do the same.
And the overriding issue with factory ECU tuning that creates the difficulty and complexity is that, when at Audi or at Bosch, they have definitions. So all these random numbers and these 50,000 maps with just random numbers in them, all of a sudden they lay those definitions over that, and they can see exactly what it is. It's a totally logical user interface. But we don't have that. Nobody has that outside of Audi and Bosch. So we're flying blind. This is the difference between a standalone. A standalone ECU, even the most complex ones, might have 100 or 200 maps. And they're all labeled. There's tabs for them all. You can see how they interact with each other. You can put your mouse over the field and it gives you tips on what to do. It's user friendly. It's a graphical user interface designed to allow the end user to be successful. But when we're doing factory calibrations, it's the opposite. There's nothing. So it's you're completely blind with your arms tied behind your back, in a underwater.
Yeah, so it's a lot of work to build up the information needed to just get started. And it's only been more and more of that needed as the platforms get more and more complex. Because
every new ECU, every new
ECU, every new generation, and then it's there's so many intertwined, rationale checks and plausibility tests and everything that are always running in the background, and then. The faster and faster these processes are getting that are in these ECUs, the more of that stuff is going on in the background that you've got to keep an eye on, or that is keeping an eye on you, basically.
So a lot of it is okay, the ECU's asking for the right amount of boost, the car's giving the right amount of power. You drive it down the street, it feels great. Well, what happens when the coolant temps hit 220? What happens when the air temps hit 95? What happens when all that's been going on for 20 minutes, and that's why the testing and the validation of these things is so important, because we don't always know which map is just waiting to kick in that hasn't been activated yet. And good examples. We were at the track last week, and the car got to a certain temp, and it did a limp mode. Well, it's because some map got activated that we hadn't activated yet. So we were able to fix it at the track.
It pushed some of those ability numbers out of where the safety monitors wanted them. And the ECU, there's a whole process of functions in the ECU that is just sitting there watching all the inputs and outputs and doing all these tests against them. And you have to, if you're not just hacking at it, turning it all off, which we don't do,
right.
You need to make sure that all your numbers coming in and out are aligned and calculated the way that the ECU is expecting.
These are basically
fundamental,
These are basically ECU nannies that are making sure that the kids aren't going to hurt themselves. And like I said earlier, some of the tuners are like, you don't need a babysitter. You can just go off on your own. It'll be fine.
Yep.
And,
and I mean, these are cars, you're talking with like lane assist, with radar cruise, with the drive-by-wire, with all.
Drive-by-wire is terrifying.
Yeah. So we don't want to just go in and just turn off all these things that are, fundamental safety functions either of these. So.
Follow-up is B9 ZF8 TCU tuning. What are we changing? What are the downsides? Any reliability concerns?
Sure. Primarily, it's going to be more of a, we have to change it to allow for the higher output in the engine because again, we're not falsifying the numbers coming out of the ECU. So, we need to rescale what the TCU can handle and can expect from the ECU. So that's one of the good litmus that's been around for a while is if you don't need a stage 1 TCU tune on a lot of the modern cars, then they're fudging something in the ECU,
or you're leaving something.
Or you've got a bunch of power laying on the table.
Because the TCU is part of controlling the amount of power the car can produce.
Right.
The TCU plays a role in that. So for the B9, we will be releasing a TCU tune, and it's required to get the most out of the tune. Although we could release a non-TCU tune that will make this power.
Yeah, you'll hit a torque plateau that the TCU is not going to allow anymore. So there's that.
There are lots of reliability concerns for us when we're doing the engineering. There are zero for you as the customer because
we wouldn't expect a shorter life on any of these.
We've gone through that process.
And these TCUs, the transmissions, they've been pretty tried and tested. That ZF8, platform has had a lot more power put through it than what we're dealing with here. So, there's going to be some changes to shift speeds and shift points and that kind of thing.
And launch control, and just making the TCU more sporty. It's like when on the B9 when you're in drive versus sport mode, you immediately notice upshifting, downshifting changes.
Right.
Of course, the car gets louder, but that has nothing to do with that. But and so we can continue to augment that and make it sportier, and that's what we did. And that's what we do for the DSGs as well.
Yep.
But ultimately, from a performance standpoint, the goal is to make the engine make more power and also faster, more aggressive shifting. That's also faster. The factory, especially in drive mode, they're simulated like slow automatic.
They're very blended shifts.
And you're designed not to even feel anything. In sport mode, they get more aggressive, which is nice. But no reliability concerns. No. These are tough setups, and Nate said, the ZF8's been rock solid.
Yeah, and I mean the track testing we've been doing here has been in a SQ5. So I mean,
it's kind of a worst case scenario.
It's very much so a worst case scenario for just the weight of the vehicle,
and that much more humiliating when you get past.
It really is,
especially.